Welcome to Shadow Talkers, where we explore the shadows of the known world and beyond. I am YoKDog.
And I'm RulyWolf.
Hello!
The Ouija Board, otherwise known as the Spirit Board or the Talking Board. It consists of letters and alphabets, the numbers 0 through 9, with the words yes or no, hello, and occasionally goodbye. Along with various symbols and graphics, it uses, see, we can't read here, but that's okay. It uses a small heart-shaped piece of wood or plastic called a planchette. This board is said to connect you to the spirit world, or maybe it's just a game. What are your thoughts?
Well, I personally have not used a Ouija board and have no desire to because there are so many stories out there about all the bad things that have happened. Like, there are people who are like, I don't believe in anything, but I won't use a Ouija board. Clearly that means something, at least to me.
Well, correct. There's a lot of people who are very afraid of the Ouija board, and I would have to say from things I've heard in the past, I don't blame them, because ultimately there's some strange things that goes on with something that they claim to be a game, but yet it connects you to the spirit world. So what is it? Is it a gateway, or is it just a stupid game that people play, but yet it scares the living bejeebies out of people?
Exactly. And interestingly enough, the desire for spiritualism came after the Civil War because there were so many deaths that people wanted some connection to those they had lost. And that's where spirit boards came about, kind of, because the Ouija board is not by any means the first spirit board. It's just the most popular one.
Correct. There's certainly a lot of commercialism about it. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I remember as a kid, we played with it, but we were kids, and kind of like I just talked to somebody else and they said the same thing, that their experience with the Ouija board really meant nothing to them at the beginning, because you're a kid and everybody's kind of pushing the planchette around to answer questions like, are you there? And it slides across the board. Yes. Of course, it really doesn't speak, but that was my interpretation. But the point being is, it moved and you thought it was exciting, and nothing bad really happened. But as you get older and talk to people who are older, and I mean older like beyond their early teens, they're very scared of this board, and I do believe there's a good reason for it.
Well, and actually, there are a lot of things online about things that do's and don'ts of using a Ouija board. And asking things like, are there any spirits with us, is one of those things that you shouldn't ask, because that's opening it up to inviting spirits in there.
Okay, so real quick, let's go back on the history of the Ouija board. What I know is it was put out as a game in like 1890. And they claimed it was a game, and some people it was a game of good luck. And actually, it was the very rich and wealthy who started playing this game. Unlike what you said, RulyWolf, this certainly has gone, the history of this goes way back. So if you look at this type of talking board, this isn't new, but this is the one that's put out that we all know about. You know, the cardboard board that folds out, and you have that little triangular piece with a kind of a plastic mirror in the middle, and they call it a planchette, and everybody puts their fingers on it and it moves around, and supposedly you can ask spirits questions, and supposedly they answer by using your energy through your body connected to the planchette to move around and point to numbers or letters to answer any questions you have. So, that being said, you know, again, a game or not game, certainly doesn't sound like a game to me when you're trying to mess with the spirit world.
Right. Well, and I think that the reason that the Ouija board is so prominent, because I'm sure the majority of people, if you go up to them and you're like, oh, have you played with a spirit board? They might be like, what? They might not totally know what you're saying. But I've yet to run into anybody who doesn't know what a Ouija board is. Like, so many people know what it is. So the first adverts for the Ouija board came out in 1891, and it only cost $1.50. But something really interesting is that according to the Smithsonian website, the Ouija board has been quote unquote proven to work by the patent office. That before the patent was even allowed to proceed, they had to prove that it worked.
So how crazy is that? That the patent office people believe that the Ouija board actually works. So, in other words, you must be contacting the spiritual world for it to work, correct?
Exactly, yeah. That's what it said. Because usually, yeah.
I know you're lost for words. Well, yeah.
I had a train of thought, and that train just like derailed. So I totally forgot.
Well, and here's the funny part. I mean, so the patent people are saying, okay, in order to patent this, you need to prove to us that you can contact the spiritual world, otherwise, aka ghosts. Oh, wow, it works, and you're talking to the ghosts. So if those people are accepting it, then there must really be some kind of connection that this board is connecting to the spirit world. That's my take on it anyway.
And I would agree with that. And I think that goes back to, yet again, that so many people have experiences, especially people who, claim, well, not especially, but including people who claim that, they don't believe in anything and they still wouldn't, or they've played with a Ouija board and something's happened. And it's one of those prominent things that's out there. Like, I mean, you have the Bloody Mary game, you spin around saying Bloody Mary 3 times and then she appears in the mirror, but you really don't ever hear people saying things like, oh, I would never do that. That's just so freaky or anything like that. Like, you hear people and they're like, oh yeah, nothing happened. But when it comes to the Ouija board, there are a lot of accounts of things happening.
And that is correct. I mean, totally correct. Let's kind of go, I can tell you a couple things. So, for example, I worked at a toy store / hobby store, and I was the assistant manager of the assistant manager. Just kidding, if anybody knows the sitcom Office. And if you don't, that's okay, go watch it.
That's the assistant to the assistant. Right?
Oh, yes, I was the assistant to the assistant manager. No, really, though, I was the assistant manager, and I worked the evening shift. And again, we're mostly toys and hobbies. But we did carry the Ouija board, which actually kind of bothered me as a person on a personal level, because I thought that was a weird thing to have in a toy store where young kids are coming in and they're looking for the games like Go Fish and other fun games, and then you have the Ouija board. But yet it was put out there as a game that is a very kid-friendly game. But to me, I don't think it is, and I'll explain why. But being in the store, it was really odd because people would call up and they would ask if we had a Ouija board. But they wouldn't just say, hey, I'm sorry, but do you carry the Ouija board? I'd like to buy one for my kid. It wasn't that way. It was always some kind of weird person. And they would talk in strange voices, and I'm not making this up. And I can't even imitate it as good as it was, but it would be like, do you carry a Ouija board? And at first I would laugh at people like, get off my phone. Why are you calling me? Do you carry a Ouija board? And I'd be like, no, we don't. And I would say that because I didn't like the fact that we had them to begin with, because they weren't toys in my opinion. But whatever. The point was, some freak is calling me on the phone, talking to me that way, and that kind of ticked me off. I'd be like, no, I don't. And they'd be like, you're lying. We're going to come get you. And creepy stuff like that. I'd be like, okay, come to the store. I'm here. My name's Kevin. Guess what? By the way, yeah, you want to come talk to me? I'm here. Come talk to me in person. Because that like kind of ticked me off. I'm like, whatever. But we got calls like almost on a weekly basis asking for, honestly, a stupid game called the Ouija Board, which I don't think is a game at all. But anyhow, the point is, if you want to come buy it, fine, we'll sell it to you because that's what we do. But I don't need to answer to your creepy personality. That's what I'm going to say. I'm being nice. So, yeah, it's kind of odd.
Yeah, it's a little bit odd. They have a very strong following of people who are very adamant about them working, and actually, mediums, at least back in earlier times of the Ouija board, they actually weren't very happy about it because they felt that they lost business because it cut them out as a middleman.
Ooh, very interesting. That's called entrepreneurship.
Exactly. That being said, I do believe there are some mediums now who use them, so they kind of worked it out for themselves.
Well, that's a great business model. So if you have competition, what do? You incorporate that competition into your business. So there you go. That kind of adds a little more credence that there must be something to the Ouija board besides being a dice rolling game, which there's no dice involved. I'm just saying that. So, okay, so let's get to the point. So it came up in the 1890s. It was used by the rich people. RulyWolf, do you remember who ended up marketing that board?
Yeah, I believe it was Hasbro.
Okay, so Hasbro made it into an actual game. I'm sorry, what?
I'm almost positive because I believe I've seen jokes online about how you can go buy Monopoly and a Ouija board.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Get rich and contact the spiritual world. No, wait. Contact the spiritual world and get rich.
Exactly.
There you go. That's how it's supposed to work. Well, let's get down to the nitty gritty. So it comes down to this because this is actually our third attempt to make a recording on the Ouija board, and it's kind of interesting. There's a lot to put in there, but yet it's so odd and out of place. It's really kind of hard to have a conversation and bring up just information, but yet you want to bring in the weirdness of it. So as RulyWolf mentioned, and I mentioned too, we know people who have messed with it, and they're either scared or ultimately petrified of what has happened with the Ouija board. Now, I personally, like I said, as a little kid, I do remember, maybe 11, 10, somewhere in that age, somebody had a Ouija board, and you push the planchette around, and, you don't believe anything, and nothing ever happened. So it's kind of like a game, and it's like a stupid game. But when you get older and you start believing or seeing things in the spiritual side of the world, or you want to believe in the spiritual world, then you start gravitating towards something like this because this is like the gatekeeper to the spiritual world. And that's how it's portrayed when you take away the front of, oh, it's just a game. We play it every Friday night and we have milkshakes and cookies and we're all happy. That's not really how it works. When you play with the Ouija board, you're not looking to have a confetti fun-filled party. You're looking for something kind of ooky spooky. Would you agree, RulyWolf?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I've never seen anybody who's like, hey, I'm bored. Let's play a board game. Okay, let's pull out the Ouija board. No, they're always like, in at least in Hollywood, it's set up as a spooky thing, like, oh, we're gonna play a Ouija board. Whether anything happens or not, there's somebody there who's like, oh, I don't want to play it. I don't think that's a good idea. Somebody else who's like, oh, you're chicken. It's just the way it is.
Right. And if you do look at it that when you bring up Hollywood, if there wasn't something scary about it, they probably wouldn't use it because it certainly doesn't make you think of a fun, hey, it's my birthday party, let's Ouija.
Exactly.
Not at all. So they're using it as a scary thing, and there's a couple movies out now about Ouija, the Ouija board, and it's all about scary and spiritual weird things. But if you look at it in talking to other people, and people will openly talk about it, and they're actually more than happy to talk about it because it's still that nervousness, scaredness that they have inside. And if you said, hey, have you ever played with the Ouija board? I would say at least 90% or higher, people say, oh yes, it was the scariest thing in my life. I will never do it again. Or they'll say, oh no, I won't touch it because I know so-and-so who messed with it, and this is what happened, and today they're scared out of their wits and will never touch it again. So that's one of those things where you kind of have to take some credence of, is this really something that is a gatekeeper to, or the gateway to the spirit world? And I'll throw something in there. I remember one time I went to a party. I was a little bit older, and it was a kegger. International kegger. No, intergalactic. Intergalactic kegger. Any of you who remember the movie Men in Black, it's intergalactic kegger. Anyhow, we had gone there. I went with a friend of mine, and I didn't know the person who was having the party. And she's like, hey, we're going to this party. Let's go over. I'm like, okay. So we went over, and while we're there, we like had a beer each, so it's like really nothing much to drink. And she said, oh, by the way, she's like, I forgot to tell you, but they're gonna have a seance tonight. I'm like, what? Now I personally think there's a spiritual world, and I think you don't mess with it unless you're willing to deal with stuff you don't want to deal with. So anyhow, so she is like, oh yeah, they're going to have a seance and you're using a Ouija board to start it. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like, I don't want to be part of this. She goes, no, we don't have to be part of it. We can hang out in the kitchen and talk, and you don't have to worry about it. And she goes, oh, by the way, the guy running it is an actual satanic priest. And I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like, is this made up? I'm like, shut up. I'm like, shut up. She's like, no, I'm serious. He's a satanic priest going to use the Ouija board to start the seance. Okay, to keep the story short, the point is, I was like, you know what? I'm ready to go. We can go somewhere else. This is just not my gig. She's like, no, we're good. We'll just hang out here. But we hung out in the kitchen away from everybody else. Well, they started the seance, and they used a Ouija board. And you can hear the guy talking to the Ouija board. And then you could hear some chanting going on. And then he started getting really mad. Now, I'm going to interrupt here for a second the story. I believe there's a positive and a negative in the spirit world. And I think when you have positive people with positive energy involved with negative people and negative energy, there's going to be a conflict. So that being said, I'm more on the positive side. And I was against this. And, I really had this external feeling that I don't want this. This was this is not good, and I was kind of putting out those vibes. Anyhow, the priest dude started getting super mad, and he started chanting louder and louder, and people started getting really restless. And this is really bizarre. You had to be there to see it, and I wish you could describe it better. But he actually had kind of the silk robe with the silk hoodie on, and say you would see in a movie, a scary movie of Satanism, and it just kind of had that, I'm not liking this. And I started feeling a presence, a negative presence, and I didn't like it. I was kind of pushing back in a sense, and he got madder and madder until all of a sudden he started screaming, somebody's stopping this. Somebody's stopping it. Who's stopping this? I'm going to kill them. I'm like, oh, I hope he's not talking about me. And I'm like, okay. I'm ready to get up and get out of there. Well, I forgot that my jacket was in the other room where they're having the seance. And I lived at that time in a very, very cold state. So you don't go outside with a jacket. So I went in to get my coat. He's throwing stuff around the room. And again, you had to be there to experience it. And if you want to take my word, great. If you don't, that's fine. I don't care. I know what I saw. But while we were there, they had candles going on. And then all of a sudden, the candles blew out. But there was still, he had one light on in the hallway down the ways. So the candles all went out. And you're like, okay, this is stupid. This is like a scary movie. And then this darkness came in to the house, like in the hallway, and it started at the end of the hallway where the light was, and the light grew very, very incredibly dim, and this loud, dark howl came screaming down the hallway towards us, and then the curtains and everything blew all over the place, and no lie, it freaked everybody out, and the majority of the people ran out of the house, including me. I was right with them, running out of the house with my friend, going, "We're out of here." She's like, "I'm with you," and we were going out the door. It was like the house had caught on fire, and everybody freaked out and ran out of the house. Now, I can't explain it. I wouldn't believe it personally if I saw it, and if you told me that, I don't know if I believe you either. But the point was, very scary, but it all started with the Ouija board. And so I think, honestly, that is the gateway to the spirit world.
And I actually have a really fun thing I found this evening that you don't know about YoKDog. So congratulations, everybody. You get a surprise reveal. No, I'm just kidding. That you might find interesting based off of your experience. So there are a few warning signs about that you are meeting Zozo. So Zozo is an ancient, they believe he's Babylonian, Mesopotamian demon, and he goes by the name of Zozo, Zoso, Zaza, Zo, or Pazuzu. And actually, Pazuzu is in the Exorcist movie, and getting a little derailed here. After the Exorcist movie came out, Ouija board sales actually dropped because people were so freaked out from that movie that Ouija board sales dropped. But then, even though it was like a low budget movie, that movie board Ouija increased the sales of Ouija boards by 300%.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. But so Zozo or Pazuzu, I think those are the most common ones. He is actually linked to the Ouija board. Other people have talked about talking to him or whatnot in other ways, but most commonly it's the Ouija board. So a few warning signs that you're meeting Zozo is: 1, the planchette may make sudden movements. So instead of smooth movements, it might be fast and sudden. 2, Zozo may announce himself by spelling his name. 3, you get feelings of unease or dread. And then this is the important one that I think YoKDog might find interesting. Number 4 is darkness. You may see moving shadows, or the room may even get darker.
That is fascinating because I did not know that, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, and I thought you would find that interesting because I hadn't heard that specifically before.
Well, I can tell you this. Had I known about this way back when, and that happened, and Zozo the Clown stepped out like he did, I'd have punched him in his big red nose because he pissed me the hell off. Although, really, he pissed me off, and he did scare the bejeebies out of us. But see, I didn't know any of this, and so now you just brought that up. That's very interesting because it went to that darkness and kind of that dread, that fear. It was crazy. It was super crazy.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I know how I feel when things get spooky. It's not very fun.
No, it's not. But that shows you that, there's something with the Ouija board that maybe you should not mess with. And, these movies that are out there and the scariness and stuff, that's what people talk about. And I think they base those movies off of that. It's put out as a game, but like you said, RulyWolf, if it's actually tied to a specific, is it a demon, I'm assuming, yes?
Yeah, I believe.
Do they say spirit or do they say demon?
Most of the time when you look, you see demon, and the Zozo specific Mesopotamian, Babylonian aspect is a demon.
Wow, so that's very ancient. That shows you how far back this goes. So why do you want to mess with it? Why? I didn't want to mess with it. I didn't want to deal with what I had to deal with, but I did. And now I have PSD because of that. Is that right, PSD?
It's PTSD.
PTSD. PTSD. No, but seriously, I mean, a lot of people have said, how crazy this is, and I kind of repeating myself, I guess, in a way, and I don't want to, but it's put out there as a game, but it's not a game, and I truly believe it's a gateway. And RulyWolf, I'm sure you have something else to add to this, but certainly if you're planning on messing with it, I'd be very, very careful, because everybody I've talked to who wasn't like a young kid, they regret they ever even known about this board.
Right, and I haven't met anybody personally. Actually, at work, before doing the show, I went around asking my coworkers, like, hey, have you ever played with the Ouija board? And all of them are like, oh, hell no. They're like, are you going to play with one? I was like, no. And they're like, oh, good. They're like, we wouldn't want you to come into work after playing with one.
Right. So they're scared you would even bring something.
Yeah, right. And they're all younger than me, too. Just
wow.
Yeah, they're a good between like 8 and 10 years younger than me. The majority of them are. So they're a younger generation, and they still wouldn't play with it. So that says something, I think.
Right. Well, we kind of skipped a lot of the history. I mean, because there's a lot of history about how it came into being into the modern world, and how it's progressed, and who made it, and blah blah blah. And maybe RulyWolf, you have some other stories you want to add, but ultimately you have to look at the Ouija board as being a very key connection to the spirit world, and people really have disturbing issues with it, which I find it fascinating. Why is this still on the market as a board game if it causes people such trouble? Do you know what I'm saying? Exactly.
Especially with the patent office having had to have quote unquote tested it out to prove that it was legitimate enough to get a patent. Like, what if it came out true? Wouldn't you be like, yeah, that's great, but no, you can't sell this as a game?
Well, right. And wasn't the whole thing with the patent is that they asked it to spell somebody's name that was a very difficult name to spell, the last name, and it spelled it, and so they believed that it actually happened, and thus they said, okay, we're going to give you a patent. How crazy is that?
Exactly. It's totally crazy. And the other thing is that there are rules, like do's and don'ts of Ouija boards. Like, never use it while you're sick, because you're compromised. For lack of a better word.
So more susceptible. Susceptible.
That's perfect. That's exactly what I was needing. So you're more susceptible when you're sick. So you shouldn't use a Ouija board while sick. You should never leave the planchette alone on the board, because then the planchette can move and do whatever it wants, and there's no way for you to see it or stop it. Never burn it. Like, ever. So you play it with a Ouija board and you have spirits bothering you, don't burn the board, because it won't stop it. It's supposedly bad luck to burn the board. And then on top of that, you have a very high chance of kind of pissing off those spirits that you were talking to, and they'll make things worse for you than they did from you just playing with the board.
Wow. So what if you throw it in an outhouse after it pesters you?
I don't know. I feel like that might be worse than burning it.
How about if you put it on a boat and send it across the seas? I'm just saying.
Well, I don't know, because if the spirits are attached to that board, then maybe it would. Something is, another one of those rules is to use it as far away from your home as possible, because essentially you're inviting it into your home. Whatever you're talking to, Zozo, spirits, other demons, you're inviting it into your home when you use it in your home. And even then, the suggestion is to use it far, far away, because they could follow you back to your home.
So then, don't you get the hint right there? Don't mess with it.
Yeah, right?
I mean, you're right.
Another one that I feel like is kind of an obvious is don't use it in a graveyard. That's another one.
Oh, right?
I don't know. You have to be hardcore to be like, I'm gonna go play a Ouija board in a graveyard. Like,
right?
Yeah, so there's that. One of the important things is that when you're using a Ouija board, you should not treat it as a game. And this is one of the rules. This isn't something I'm saying personally. This is one of the rules I found. And there are lots of different rules. These are some of the basic ones I found. And there are more out there. But one of the rules is don't treat it as a game. That it isn't really a game no matter what you believe. And that you are opening yourself up to basically whatever. And whether what happens is real or it's in your head, you are still putting that in your mind, so you shouldn't treat it as just a game.
So basically, it's like a contract saying, in using, or how would you put that? Let's put it legally. With you picking up the planchette and using it, knowing full well of the consequences, you have legally contracted yourself to be fully liable to any circumstances that happen to you, and we're totally negate. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, so.
Well, I would agree with that. Oh, and I just saw this note. I missed it earlier, but Zozo will occasionally interrupt communications between players and spirits.
I'm sorry, he'll do what?
So if you are using a Ouija board and you're talking to another spirit, Zozo will interrupt your conversation.
You know what? I will knock that clown out. I'm just saying. I'm just telling you. But you know what? I won't meet him because I guess I met him once in kind of a not personal way, but on the sideline.
Yeah, and you pissed him off, so congratulations.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me. I was just having a beer. That's all I was doing. Well, you know, I had to say I did watch somebody in England or Europe went out to use a Ouija board recently. It was a good video because they were very good. You know, we're either going to debunk it or it's going to happen. And they went to a couple haunted places or supposed haunted places with very high activity. And in the first two places they went to, nothing happened. And they tried all sorts of different things because the whole thing is we're all made of energy. So if we put your, like, why do you put your hand on the planchette? So supposedly the energy from you is being used by the spirit to move the planchette. Well, nothing happened. They had two guys there, and they're very hardcore. I give them credit for just not pushing the planchette around and pretending something was happening. Then they did it without touching it. They're like, well, why do we have to touch it? If this spirit is energy, why can't it move the planchette around? And nothing happened. Then they went to another place that had the same effect. Then they went to a third place that supposedly had a lot of kids who had passed away in the spot they were at. And, you know, and children in normal life have a lot of energy. So the theory was in the spirit world, they would have energy too. But they brought in a third party who was the owner of the property who insisted it was haunted. Then the planchette moved around. So watching the video, you couldn't tell if he was moving it or not. It was one of those, okay, it doesn't look like they're moving it on purpose. The other two guys are like, okay, this is weird. It's actually moving. So it's like, at what point do you believe or not believe? And the answers they got were really minimal and nothing exciting happened except for that triangle moved across the board. And that's where people get interested and excited about wanting to play the Ouija board. Okay, it's moving around and nothing, you know, you get some questions answered supposedly, but how do you know the other person's not moving it if you're actually touching it? And then, so if somebody moves it around, well, it's obviously not Zozo, because I can tell you from personal experience, I guess, he gets pretty ticked off and causes kind of a lot of scariness. So, I don't know. It's just not something you mess with, in my opinion.
Right. And I'd be really curious to know if any of our listeners have ever played with the Ouija board. And if they have, did you have any experiences? And if you haven't, why not? Like, is that something you don't want to do? Or you know, like YoKDog and I were like, I've heard enough. I don't really want to find out myself, you know? So definitely let us know.
Right. I mean, I would love to check out more stuff, but that's one thing I will not pursue after what I experienced. And that was just on the sideline, because I think like anything you deal with the spirit world, when you start implanting it or interceding with an object, I believe you can personally bring objects into your house that could have spirits in them. Like the Ouija board, I think the implication alone could potentially maybe have a spirit, or maybe it's just a piece of cardboard. You just don't know. I just don't think you mess with that kind of stuff unless you're willing to deal with the consequences. And you better have a big backbone, because some of this stuff can get nasty. Now, I don't know how nasty. Certainly what I saw was very benign. It was more scary, very visual, very vocal, but yet not physical in the sense of it didn't attack or hurt anybody, but it scared the living daylights out of everybody. So,
well, and you know, there are stories that there have been unfortunate events in conjunction with use of a Ouija board. William Fuld was best known for the marketing and manufacturing of Ouija boards since the 1890s. He ended up dying after a fall from a newly erected Ouija board factory in Baltimore. And it said Fuld supposedly blamed his death on a spirit he channeled through his Ouija board, who consulted him to, quote unquote, prepare for big business. He was rushed to the hospital after his fall, but he had broken several bones and he would have been okay. But it just so happened that, according to what I read, one of his ribs punctured his heart, and he ended up dying. And on his deathbed, he made his kids promise to never take part in the selling of Ouija boards, and he believed it had played a supernatural role in his death.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, did his tombstone say "Death by Ouija"? I mean, I know, I mean, silly, but how freakadeek is that? That all of a sudden he's telling his kids, "Don't mess with it."
Yeah, I mean, and then if you're ever bored and in the Baltimore area, the spot where the Ouija board got its name is a 7-Eleven now, and they actually have a plaque inside to commemorate the event. So there you go.
A big gulp and your Ouija board.
Oh my gosh, I wonder if they sell Ouija boards. Now I'm curious.
Right? Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's too funny.
So if you play at the Ouija board and you take a couple of big gulps and Slurpees home and you have a sugar high and you hallucinate what's real and what's not.
Yeah, right.
Sorry. Anyhow, yeah, a very fascinating topic. So much to it.
Yeah, totally. And we barely scratched the surface. I think a lot of the stuff that we talk about, we barely scratched the surface, but this is yet again another thing. Absolutely.
Like RulyWolf said, please send us a tweet or an email if you've had any experiences, because we've talked to people, and maybe someday down the road we'll get somebody on there and we'll discuss their situation that they had also, because too many people have had experiences to knock this off as this is just a gimmick, it's just a game. Yeah, I'm thinking that.
Right. And again, let us know what you think, because everybody has a different opinion. In my experience, and I've been a fair amount of places, but in my experience, I haven't met anybody who's like, yeah, I played with one and it was fine. So everybody's different though. So just definitely let us know.
Right. I'm going to have to try to attach some spooky music to this podcast.
All right, guys, I think that is the end of our show, so that we don't completely talk your ears off, because we've got a lot of information we could talk about here. But we are super appreciative of everybody listening. And YoKDog, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I don't, except for don't play with the Ouija board. That way you can sleep at night peacefully without an evil clown Zozo pestering you? You're like, don't say that. You're like, don't say that.
I'm sitting there like, great, now it's going to happen tonight.
Right.
Well.
You know me. Zozo shows up, I'll be like, get out of my room now. I'll punch you in the nose. And then, but you, I don't know. What would you do?
Well, I don't know. That's different. It's not quite like it. So, it's not this shape-changing clown that wants to eat people. It's a spirit or a demon. I don't know.
I know, right? Yes.
I'd probably tell it to F off. I'm tired.
I would probably be a little more panicked if a red balloon floats into my room. Then we got a different issue. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, I'm not too concerned.
Right. And then, random fact, because I actually had missed this earlier. I missed a lot of things today, which is okay. But, so somebody who played a big part in naming the Ouija board, her name was Helen Peters. And one of the founders, according to him, on her deathbed, she was telling everyone, don't play the Ouija board because it lies. So from everything we've said in the show, take that away from it, because I do think that's a fair assumption. And if you look at do's and do nots of Ouija board, almost every single one at some point in part of it, it says to do or not do something because the spirit could lie to you. Like, for example, you're not supposed to ask the spirit if it's evil, because if it is, it's going to lie to you. And if it's not, you're just going to piss it off because you offended it. So just, if you're going to do it, be cautious. Like, there's so much information out there on how to do it, how not to, break the rules, and that should say something.
See, and here's my public announcement. Just say no. There you go. Don't mess with it.
There you go.
You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that, and I'm going to keep it that way.
Right.
All right, guys. So I think that's the end of our show today. We hope you enjoyed it. Leave us a comment, like us. We are officially live, so you can find us on iTunes, add Podcast Addict to your phone, and you can listen to us there. We are also on Twitter at Shadow Talkers. And
Shadow Talkers. Hang on. ShadowTalkers.space.
I said Twitter. I wasn't even there.
My bad.
Shut up. So Twitter's is just Shadow Talkers. And then our website is shadowtalkers.space. It's spelled the same way as it is in the show. ShadowTalkers.space. SPACE. So check us out. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you want to hear a show on. We're always up for suggestions. And we hope you have a wonderful whatever time of night or day it is. And until next time, explore the shadows.